What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla stock, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to talk about Nvda spying the QQQ very briefly, and then break down some very big headlines that just came out, which are very important for the markets, and talk about how the market's looking in the pre-market as we're seeing the market pump. Before breaking anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 7 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at the market, we're actually gapping up very, very nicely as the market's very excited about this news. In my video from yesterday, I told you guys that there were two ways you can interpret Powell's words. He said some very, very hawkish and bearish things, and he also said some very bullish things and very, very awesome things for the economy. And the thing that's making the headlines, or one of the biggest things that he said, was that the Fed is no longer forecasting a recession. And this is actually making the headlines. And I told you, if this were to make the headlines, we're going to see the market explode to the upside. This was the more bullish catalyst, and this is what the market is focused on. Now, the market could have looked at the hawkish things Powell said that could have caused the market to slow down, and they could have focused on that. But the market's not really as focused on that. They're more focused on this more significant news, and the market is just excited because the Fed is saying they're no longer forecasting this recession. That's why the market is pumping the way it is. On top of that, we had other good pieces of data I'm going to break down in just a couple of minutes. We had Royal Caribbean, McDonald's, Southwest, and a couple of others reporting their earnings. So far, quite promising earnings, but these earnings are not as big compared to others we saw in the past. Going into the after hours, we have Ford, Intel, and Roku all reporting earnings. This is going to be significant. They could affect the market at least to some degree by tomorrow. Now, looking at the numbers, we have some very, very interesting news. The GDP numbers came in better than expected, meaning the economy is stronger than what we were basically forecasting, and we're continuing to see the GDP numbers hold up quite nicely, right? Economists would define a recession as two negative consecutive GDP quarters. We so far have not gotten that. We haven't even seen a negative GDP quarter or even close to that just yet. We are seeing GDP declining at least a little bit, but overall it still is in the positive, and the Fed is just going nuts over this. The Fed is using this as a reason to not forecast a recession, and they believe that right now things are holding up a lot better. Now, people could argue that we're already in a recession, seeing many, many different factors like that. I'm simply talking about the economic definition, the one that's accepted by many economists. And so far, we haven't really met that definition going forward. Now, the GDP numbers were quite positive in fueling the narrative of the Fed and the soft landing narrative, whatever you want to call it. So far, that's being fueled by the GDP numbers. The initial jobless claims came out a little bit lower than expected at 221,000. This is once again showing us that the labor market is quite strong. It's very resilient. It's not really getting a major contraction like many people were expecting. And this is important to note because the market is still fine with this. Overall, the news has been very overwhelming, and the market is very excited. So moving forward, we know the Fed gave us a 25 basis point rate hike. They did say that inflation is set to remain too high for too long. So there was one thing that was kind of negative that made some headlines, at least this morning. But besides that, the majority of the news has been just about Powell and the Fed saying that a recession is no longer in their forecast. Now, for earnings, we had Meta doing better than expected. I talked about this yesterday. Meta's up like crazy. It's up almost 10% right now, holding up very nicely. We also saw some big boosts for Comcast. That was bullish news too. Shell was a little bit weak. I think their profits they slided down, excuse me. And then finally, we had Meta doing very, very well, which is very awesome to see. We had McDonald's also doing relatively well with their Grimace, advertising, etc. And the Dow is on a tear, up for 13 positive sessions in a row. This is the best we've seen since 1987. As far as Tesla goes, you can see right over here, there's actually not really any major headlines I saw so far, but we are seeing some news saying that the major automakers partner on new EV charging network to rival Tesla. And simultaneously, we're getting this news right here about how Tesla got around the Connecticut ban with a clever loophole. So that's once again awesome, pretty good news for Tesla. The question is, how will Tesla move going forward? This is going to be a matter of just watching support and resistance. So for Tesla, here's the thing, okay? Tesla has a gap to the upside that it just gave us. It gapped up and now it rejected off this 270 resistance. It came down and retested this 268 resistance. Now it's trying to make its way up to about 270. If it breaks 270, you're going to be watching 272, then 274 to 275. If you want to really turn bullish on Tesla, okay, on the bigger time frames, you want to see Tesla break above critical resistance around 274. If Tesla could break that area, if we get above that, we're going to be watching this imbalance for 278. Then we're going to be watching for a pump all the way back to fill the gap, all the way up to about this like 290 area. But in order for that to happen, okay, the first step, you have to take baby steps. The first step would be break 275. We need Tesla to do that. If it does that, it could turn bullish. If it fails to do so, it could still be on a bearish trend. Don't forget about that. So we're going to be watching this 275 zone on Tesla. It's going to be very critical if Tesla can make its way up there. And for now, specifically, we're watching 270 to see if we can make our way up to 275. Now, if it fails to do so, if Tesla rejects and breaks below 267.5, we're going to see Tesla get a rug pull and come all the way down to 265. Okay, I want to warn you guys about that. Be very careful with Tesla. It's kind of in the middle right now, so we're going to watch and see which direction it breaks in. It gapped up nicely. It's holding up quite well so far, but we'll have to see based off the reaction from the market and based on what we're seeing on the news. Now, for SPY, this thing's going to be testing 460 to get very close to it. If it breaks 460, that's going to be some tough resistance, by the way. If it manages to break that, there's going to be the next level at 462. But just be very careful at these levels because, like I said before, we have heavy resistance at 460. If it fails to break 460 and comes down, you're going to be watching 458.33 as support at the 50 EMA. If that fails us, there's 457.8. 457.8 is going to be critical for SPY. That's the support that's holding it up right now. If that fails us, we're going to be watching for a move all the way down to about 456.99, basically 457. And if that fails us, there's 456.6, 456, and then the gap fill all the way down. If it breaks below 457.75 and it continues to look very weak in the 457s, if it gets a rejection, it's going to likely fill this gap and come all the way down to 455. So just be well aware of that. What do I see so far? It's holding up very nicely. It's still in a very, very bullish state so far at the time I'm recording this. The market's very excited, but don't forget you have to watch 460. Let's see how SPY reacts to this. Can we break it? That's going to be the question of the day. If we do so, we're going to get very close or much closer to all-time highs than before, and that's going to be very awesome for the markets. So we're going to have to wait and see. So far, the market's holding up, and things are looking quite nice. For the triple Q, this is also looking quite nice, testing 383. If that breaks, you're going to be watching a test of around this 384 resistance. Then we have 385 above that. 385 is going to be the more significant one if we manage to break 383. But we do have some tough resistance around 383. If we break down, if we get a smack to the downside, you're going to be watching support right over here around 381.5. If that fails us, if we fail to hold 381.5, we have the potential to retest 380. And then below that, or if we break below 380, we're going to fill the gap all the way down to like the 378. Okay, so those are some very critical levels. Those are the more like specific ones. 380 is going to be a very major support, 381.5 as well. And then for resistance, there's 383. Let's see if we can break this. If it breaks 383, you're going to be watching for a push for about 384. And then after that comes 385. We're in the middle. We're kind of like trading sideways right now on the QQQ. So we'll see which direction breaks. So watch support and resistance very carefully. I also want to add that Nvda, I was calling out Nvda for a while. The technicals look bullish on Nvda. We have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure. We do have this unfilled gap down here, so be a little bit careful with that, but it's actually not that far. It's not like miles away from us. So I'm going to be watching, can this thing continue to break above this 466 resistance? If it manages to do so, we're going to be well on our way into like the 475 area possibly. Now, here's how I see Nvidia. Even if this thing does come down with the market, possibly just hypothetically, and it fills this gap down here on like 456, I don't really care because I think it's just going to continue to go up for 480. I have a target of about 480 on this trend. A nice inverse head and shoulder structure is going to go for at least 478 to 480. And even if it comes down to fill this gap, it should bounce and continue pumping, or it may not even fill the gap. It may just keep going from here. So it's going to be one of those two. We're most likely going to see 480 on the video very soon, in my opinion. The chart looks very, very bullish, in my opinion. All right. So either it comes down to fill this gap and then bounces very nicely, depending on how the market reacts, or it doesn't fill the gap. It just keeps going. It could just keep going and shoot all the way up to 480 very soon. That's a very, very good target. I think it's going to make its way up there very, very shortly. All right, so that's what I'm seeing from the video. It looks quite bullish. And besides that, Meta is on a tear. It's up almost 10% right now. It's on fire. And it's getting very close to some critical levels I called out yesterday, right? We had 330, break 330. There's 335, then we have 340 as another critical level. If it gets above 340, that's going to be very important because the critical resistance for it historically was around like 353 the last time I checked. So we could get a test all the way up there if it just keeps going, right? So it's just worth noting. But for now, we have to watch 330 on Meta, see if this thing can break it. And besides that, things are looking quite good for the markets. So for Tesla, we're going to be watching these levels very carefully. The thing about Tesla is that there were many instances where it looked very weak compared to the market, and other times where it tried to hold up. So we're going to be watching it. Let's see how Tesla does. We have about 30 minutes until the market opens at the time I'm recording this. So I want the best for everyone. Do what you have to do and watch support and resistance very carefully. The market is once again pumping quite nicely, but always be prepared because anything could happen, and watch your resistance levels very, very carefully, especially that 460 on SPY. That's going to be a very, very big one. 270 on Tesla. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. Tesla on the market to the moon as the long term is still very bright, and peace out.